State lawmakers headed back to the Capitol for the special session that starts in just a couple of hours. One of the big talkers from last week, and that will continue to be a talker, is of course redistricting. At least 4 congressional districts under consideration, 3 of them in the Houston area, the other one in the DFW area. Brandon Rottinghaus, KHOU 11 political analyst. I think that the average person, when they see the maps in the Houston area, they kind of go like this, especially in the DFW area, kind of goes like that. How did it get like that? Why is it like that in the first place?
Yeah, well, the shorter answer is that lawmakers get to draw maps that protect their districts. And so as a result, not surprisingly, they're going to include areas that they like and probably exclude areas they don't like. So that's why you see these weird kind of jagged shapes. Now, the courts in the past have treated these things like a problem. Like if it looks odd, it probably is unconstitutional, but the court has backed off of that. So now lawmakers are allowed to draw these lines in pretty much any way they want to, and that can cross over political boundaries, across these community boundaries, and so there's a lot of variability that the lawmakers can have here.
To the average viewer listening, and even to me, because I've done stories about it, but I'm not always really close to this issue, it sounds like, at least the arguments are, you're just going to draw this so that more Republicans are elected. That's what the Democrats say, and the Republicans say what?
They basically say that the state's changing really fast, the communities are rapidly migrating to new places in Texas, and that the politics are shifting. So people in coalitions that used to be Republican are now Democratic, some Democrats are now Republican. So what they want to say is that Texas is this sort of fast-moving Sun Belt state, the way it has always been, and that it'll basically be something that they have to capture. Now that's hard to believe because the state did just redistrict a few years ago, and those maps are still being litigated. So technically the maps that have been drawn are still not cleared technically through a kind of constitutional process, but there's still a lot on the table here. But the real overriding pressure here is political, as redistricting always is, right? You've got the Trump administration saying, we'd love to squeeze a few more seats out of this, and Republican lawmakers saying, we'll give it a shot. Okay.
One of the big issues coming in, maybe the big issue coming in, was the THC proposal. How much did we even talk about that last week, and are we really expected to hone in on it? Or is redistricting going to take over?
Yeah, redistricting really has, I think, absorbed a lot of the oxygen in the room for good reason. Like I said, it's very political from the very top down, but THC is going to be an issue too that's going to have to be part of this. Now, that's probably the kind of thing that's going to take another special session because there's so much regulatory kind of issue that has to be involved in that. And there's so many differences politically between what the House wants and the Senate want. Now, this week, Greg Abbott weighed in and said that he would prefer to see kind of a limitation on how much can be purchased. So that regulatory scheme has to be described because every state does something a little bit different. So this is still really very much in flux.
And the other issues that we thought that we might get to, but didn't get to, I mean, even like the STAR test and replacing the STAR test. I mean, I look back and I see 4 special sessions last time, 3 the time before, I think 3 the time before that. Is it reasonable to think that we're not done after this special session?
I think it's very reasonable, and apologies to political watchers who are just live and die by these things and want this to be done and have a kind of real summer. But I think that's reality because, like you said, there's so much on the call that it's going to be impossible to get all these things done. Some of these are very contentious political issues. We saw a little bit on flooding. That's something I think we'll continue to see. The fact that they're still kind of openly debating what to do about the crisis that unfolded last month is certainly something that they have to take very carefully and very slowly, and they seem to be doing that.
For someone like yourself who does watch this extremely closely, what if anything, is really surprising you about this?
Yeah, I think the most surprising thing so far has been that, we haven't seen as much kind of contentious discussion about what's going on. I mean, the only thing that really has become very political at this point is about redistricting. But you've got things on this call which are very political, right? The kind of bathrooms bill, legislation's been filed, but no hearings. You've had discussion like about the STAR test, which there were serious debates between House and Senate about. So those are things that you would expect to see really motivating, the kind of politics of it. But redistricting has taken up almost all of that.
Just finally, one final note, because you briefly mentioned the flooding issue, that really heading into the session seemed, this is bipartisan, everybody is committed to this. How strong is our commitment now?
It's still pretty strong. I mean, certainly the hearings had a kind of few contentious moments, a little bit of finger pointing, but that was what the committee wanted to avoid. Now they're doing a joint committee, which is of House and Senate members, and so it's a big enough committee that they can balance out some of the more very partisan interests with some of the kind of more moderate interests. But the remaining issues really are still on the table, and that's about how to fund some of these programs and make sure that everyone is getting kind of what they need. Republicans and Democrats alike agree on this, despite the fact that there are differences in terms of how they prefer to have the state's role in this. But the fact is that there will be some money spent on this, and at the end of the day, it's going to be about, I think, kind of fixing some of these issues.
Okay, Brandon Rottinghaus, thank you so much. We'll no doubt talk to you later on in the session.